This conference
Hello?
will now be recorded.
So good morning to everyone. So we are going to discuss about parathyroid gland. This is the normal anatomy of the parathyroid gland. The location of the parathyroid gland. This is the thyroid cartilage. Just below the thyroid cartilage, we have thyroid gland. We have four parathyroid glands behind the posterior surface of the thyroid gland. Uh, they are situated on each lobe on posterior surface. So this is the epiglottis. So below the epiglottis, pharynx will be there. These are the pharyngeal muscles. So the parathyroid glands are closely related to pharyngeal muscles. Richard Owen in 1804 and 1892, who discovered the parathyroid glands in 1850 in rhinoceros. So he discovered first in rhinoceros. So Richard Owen first discovered the parathyroid glands. There are four tiny parathyroid glands in the neck on the posterior surface of thyroid gland. Have two superior and two inferiorly. Small in size, it's about the size of a grain. Each weighing about 30 to 50 grams. They may go up to 70 milligrams. Each about 3 to 4 millimeters. They may extend up to 8 millimeters in according to individual. So women usually have a larger parathyroid gland than men. It produces only one hormone, parathyroid hormone, control the body calcium levels. Parathyroid hormone, it controls the body calcium levels. Parathyroid hormone, also known as parathormone or parathyrin, produced by cheap cells as a polypeptide hormone containing 84 amino acids. The parathyroid hormone half-life is approximately 4 minutes. The parathyroid hormone acts to increase the concentration of ionic calcium in the blood. The major target end organs of the parathyroid hormone actions are kidney, skeletal system, and intestine. This parathyroid hormone mainly acts on kidney, skeletal system, and intestine. So this is the parathyroid gland. It secretes the parathyroid hormone. So they tend to absorb the calcium from bone and increase the levels in calcium in blood levels. So the parathyroid hormone leads to increased absorption of calcium and phosphate from the GIT. So they act on kidney. So from this effect, they leads to absorb the calcium and excrete the phosphate through the kidney. So overall, the parathyroid hormone will leads to increase in calcium levels in blood levels. So they will maintain the calcium in blood level. Parathyroid hormone biosynthesis. The parathyroid hormone is encoded by gene in chromosome 11. So the chromosome which is related to parathyroid hormone synthesis, it is present on 11th chromosome. After translation, it becomes pre-pro parathyroid hormone. It contains 115 amino acids. In endoplasmic reticulum of cell, 29 amino acids removed from the 115 amino acids. So it is called pro-parathyroid hormone. So previously it is called as pre-pro parathyroid hormone. After removing 29 amino acids from endoplasmic reticulum, so it is called as pro-parathyroid hormone, which contains 89 amino acids. So in the Golgi, removed more amino acids by peptidase to become the mature hormone. So the mature hormone stored in secretory vesicles within the cells and released when they are required. So they are stored as pre-parathyroid hormone. So this is the secretory vesicles. So whenever required, they will get released from storage form. The role of the parathyroid glands. Parathyroid hormone raises the blood calcium level by breaking down the bone. So they activate the osteoclast and that relates to bone resorption and increase the calcium in blood level. So increase the GIT ability to absorb the calcium blood. So increase the kidney to ability to retain the calcium. So they will act on both the bone and kidney and GIT. So parathyroid gland hormone, calcium sensing receptors. Whenever the blood level of calcium is low, these calcium sensing receptors, which is present on parathyroid hormone cell membrane, they sense the calcium levels. So release the parathyroid hormone into the blood. So release parathyroid hormone will act on bone. So that will leads to reabsorption of the calcium or activate the osteocalcium. That will leads to increase in the calcium in blood. So they will act on kidney. By acting on kidney, they will increase the 25 dehydroxylation of 1 hydroxy cholecalciferol. So that will leads to 125 dehydroxy cholecalciferol formation. That means vitamin D formation will be increased. So the vitamin D helps in absorption of calcium from kidney, and vitamin D also increase the absorption of calcium from intestine. So all this will lead to increasing level of calcium in blood. So this is how hypocalcemia can be maintained by releasing the parathyroid. Calcium sensing receptors. So the calcium sensing receptors are which senses the levels of calcium ion in the blood. So they will sense the intracellular calcium sensing proteins. So they act as intracellular calcium sensing proteins and extracellular calcium sensing proteins. The parathyroid cells respond to decrease in extracellular calcium concentration by means of calcium sensing receptors. A cell surface receptor that alters the phosphatidylinosyl turnover and intracellular calcium, ultimately affecting and increasing parathyroid hormone secretion. So this already explained to you. So these calcium sensing receptors will sense the blood level of calcium, and that will lead to release of parathyroid hormone. So these calcium sensing receptors in plasma membrane are cell surface receptors structured. These calcium sensing receptors are G protein coupled receptors, which are expressed on the parathyroid hormone producing cells. Parathyroid hormone producing chief cells of the parathyroid gland. So studies have demonstrated that calcium sensing receptors are expressed on the kidney, parathyroid gland, brain, and GIT. These calcium sensing receptors present on parathyroid, brain, and GIT. So this is the whole process I have already explained. So blood level of calcium drops, that will lead to release the parathyroid hormones from chief cells of the parathyroid gland. So parathyroid hormone released. So effect one. So effect on the bone, that will lead to osteoclast activation and release of the calcium into circulation. So effect on kidney. So that will lead to absorption of calcium and excretion of a phosphate. So effect 3, that will lead to vitamin D3 synthesis through kidney, and this vitamin D3 increase the absorption of calcium from gut. These are the 3 main effects of parathyroid hormone. So blood level of calcium will increase. So when there is excessive level of calcium in the blood, so that will lead to the activation of parafollicular cells of thyroid or parafollicular C cells of thyroid, that will lead to release of calcitonin, and calcitonin will activate the osteoblasts. Osteoblasts absorb the calcium. So this is the cycle. So when there is a blood level of calcium increase, calcitonin will be released from parafollicular cells, so parafollicular cells of thyroid. So that will lead to osteoblast activation and that will lead to bone formation of calcium absorption. So this is the cycle. What happens when blood level of calcium will decrease and decreasing and increasing of the calcium levels. Both parathyroid hormone and calcitonin will play a role in maintaining the calcium levels. So why calcium is so important? So a specific gland just to maintain calcium level. Most of the calcium stored in the skeleton complex with the phosphate. So most of the calcium stored along with the phosphate. So calcium has a wide range of functions that will stimulate the hormone secretion, muscle contractions, and it will help in blood clotting. So it will helps in transmission of the impulse and nerve conduction. So necessary for the activation of the some enzymes, and it acts as a transport ion across the membranes and maintain regular heartbeat and conduct electricity. So calcium homeostasis, normal level of the calcium in the blood is around 10 mg per dl. So in calcium homeostasis process, main key components are involving parathyroid hormone, So parathyroid hormone acting in kidney, GIT and bones, and 125 dihydroxy vitamin cholecalciferol like vitamin D3 and calcitonin. These are all main regulators of calcium level in blood. So calcitonin, this is also known as thyroid calcium, is a 32 amino acid linear polypeptide hormone produced by the parafollicular T cells, also known as T cells. So the thyroid, they are present in the thyroid that regulate the calcium level. Action, the receptors for calcitonin are found in bones and kidneys. So it inhibits the activity of osteoclast and increase the activity of osteoblasts. That will leads to increase the calcium excretion in urine and increase the osteoblast activity. That will lead to absorb the calcium from the blood level. So vitamin D3. So vitamin D3 formed in the skin when a cholesterol precursors is exposed to ultraviolet light. The activation occurs when the substance undergoes 25 hydroxylation in the liver and 1 hydroxylation in the kidney. So parathyroid hormone increases the 1 hydroxylation in the kidney. So that will lead to the complete form of 125 dihydroxycholecalciferol to formation in kidney. So that promote the gut absorption of calcium, stimulating formation of calcium binding protein with the intestinal epithelial cells. So vitamin D also promotes the intestinal absorption of phosphate ion, although the exact mechanism is unclear. So negatively charged phosphate ion may passively flow through the intestinal cells because of flux of the positively charged calcium ions. So in bone, vitamin D may play a synergistic role with the parathyroid hormone. So they combinedly act to absorb the calcium to release the calcium from the bone. So summary, parathyroid hormone increases the blood calcium concentration and calcium ion levels falls below normal. So first parathyroid hormone enhances the reabsorption of calcium by kidney and it then stimulates the osteoclast activity and inhibits the osteoblast activity. Finally, parathyroid hormone stimulates the synthesis of secretion of calcitriol by kidneys, which enhances the calcium absorption by the digestive system. So first in increasing the calcium levels by kidney by parathyroid hormone acting on kidney and next on bone and next on GIT. So these are also the parathyroid gland. Hyperparathyroidism. Hyperparathyroidism is the third most common endocrine disease after diabetes and thyroid disease. The excessive secretion of parathyroid hormone and extensively above the normal level. So normal level is 12 to 75 gram per ml. So when there is excessive secretion of parathyroid hormone, that is called as hyperparathyroidism. So hyperparathyroidism can be categorized into primary, secondary, and tertiary. So hyperparathyroidism. So primary means so the pathology pertaining to thyroid gland only, parathyroid gland only. So most common pathology is parathyroid adenoma and parathyroid hyperplasia is the next, and parathyroid carcinoma. Parathyroid carcinoma is rare one. So most common cause is parathyroid adenoma of primary hyperparathyroidism. And secondary cause for hyperparathyroidism is the secondary cause which will lead to excessive secretion of parathyroid hormone that will the conditions which stimulate the parathyroid gland and leads to the release of excessive parathyroid hormone. This is called secondary parathyroidism. So parathyroid the main pathophysiology is parathyroid hyperplasia due to excessive stimulation of parathyroid gland. And tertiary, so autonomous nodule on top of hyperplasia. So tertiary is the pathology is in thyroid, maybe lies in parathyroid or extraparathyroid glands. So that will lead to autonomous production of parathyroid gland. Tertiary means pathology may lie in parathyroid gland or an extraparathyroid gland. So that will lead to autonomous production of parathyroid hormone. So this is how we can classify the hyperparathyroidism: primary, secondary, and tertiary. So this is the picture showing secondary hyperparathyroidism and primary hyperparathyroidism. So secondary hyperparathyroidism, there may be parathyroid hormone levels goes up to 50 mg type 50 picogram per dl. So the cause for secondary hyperparathyroidism is vitamin D deficiency. So decreased intake decreased intake of calcium and chronic renal failure. So vitamin D resistance rickets. These are all causes for secondary hyperparathyroidism. Vitamin D deficiency, vitamin D resistant rickets, decreased intake of calcium, or chronic renal failure. So in these, parathyroid hormone levels may go up to 250 mg, and calcium level may be low up to 4 mg per dl. So primary hyperparathyroidism, the calcium level may go up to 250 mg per dl in these conditions, like hyperplasia, adenoma, or carcinoma. And calcium level may be up to 12 to 20 mg per dl. So in some primary hyperthyroidism conditions like surgical resection and autoimmune conditions, uh, the parathyroid hormone levels may be up to only between 2 picogram to in between the 250 and 2 picogram levels, and calcium level may be 4 to 12 mg per dl. In some conditions of parathyroid hormone independent hypercalcemia, excessive dietary intake or either calcium or vitamin D or both or malignancy. In all these conditions, the calcium level may be up to 12 to 20 mg per dl, and parathyroid hormone may lie in between 2 to 250 mg per dl. So hyperparathyroidism classification. So this is primary, secondary, and tertiary. So pathology. Pathology in primary hyperparathyroidism is hyperfunction of parathyroid cells due to hyperplasia or adenoma or carcinoma. So this is the main pathology. So in secondary hyperparathyroidism, physiological stimulation of parathyroid in response to hypocalcemia. This is the pathology in secondary hyperparathyroidism. In tertiary hyperparathyroidism, following long-term physiological stimulation leading to hyperplasia. So there is a long-term stimulation in tertiary, so tertiary hyperparathyroidism that will lead to hyperplasia of the gland. This is the pathology in tertiary. So association conditions in primary includes may be associated with the multiple endocrine neoplasia. The primary hyperparathyroidism may associated with the Menin syndromes, or a secondary hyperparathyroidism may be associated with the chronic renal failure or other causes of vitamin D deficiency. Tertiary may be seen in chronic renal failure. The serum calcium level in primary, the serum calcium level may be high. In secondary, the serum calcium level may be low to normal. In tertiary, serum calcium levels are high. So serum phosphate, in serum phosphate, the primary hyperparathyroidism, serum phosphate may be low or normal. Secondary hyperparathyroidism, serum phosphate levels are high. Tertiary hyperparathyroidism, both calcium and phosphate levels are high. So management includes usually surgery if symptomatic. So cinacalcet can be considered in those not fit for surgery. So treatment of underlying cause for secondary hyperparathyroidism. So usually cinacalcet or surgery in those do not respond to therapy in tertiary hyperparathyroidism. So primary hyperparathyroidism, single adenoma is the most common cause. 80% cases it is associated with a single adenoma. The rim of normal parathyroid tissue around the adenoma distinguishes adenoma from hyperplasia. So how do you differentiate between adenoma and hyperplasia? Means in adenoma there is a rim of normal parathyroid gland may be present surround the adenoma. In hyperplasia, total gland will be hyperplasia happens. In 50 to 20% of cases, hyperplasia will be present, no rim of normal parathyroid tissue, and lack of stromal fat. All four glands are involved. The hyperparathyroidism of Menin syndrome is due to hyperplasia. So parathyroid carcinoma is low, less than 1% of cases. Exceptionally high calcium or palpable neck mass should be raised suspicion of parathyroid carcinoma. Excision with thyroid lobectomy is indicated. So radical neck dissection for recurrent disease or recur locally 30%. Distant metastasis to lung, liver, and bone may be present in 30% of the cases. So difficult to distinguish between adenoma from hyperplasia histologically. So histologically you can't differentiate adenoma and hyperplasia. MEN1 and MEN2. So MEN1 means parathyroid adenoma, pituitary adenoma, pancreatic islet cell tumor. So this is the MEN1 syndrome. MEN1 syndrome includes parathyroid adenoma, pituitary adenoma, pancreatic islet cell tumor. So MEN2 includes parathyroid adenoma, thyroid medullary carcinoma, pheochromocytoma. So this is meant to secondary hyperparathyroidism. Hyperplasia of the parathyroid in response to decreased serum calcium levels. So renal osteodystrophy or chronic renal failure is the main cause for secondary hyperparathyroidism. So tertiary hyperparathyroidism means autonomous parathyroid function on top of parathyroid hyperplasia. Clinical manifestations. So renal manifestations include polyuria, polydipsia, nephrolithiasis or nephrocalcinosis. So distal renal tubular acidosis may happen. So nephrogenic diabetic insipidus may be present. Acute and chronic renal failure may be present in some cases. So gastrointestinal manifestations include anorexia, nausea, vomiting, bowel hypermotility and constipation, pancreatitis, peptic ulcers may be present. So musculoskeletal, muscle weakness, bone pains and osteoporosis may be present in some cases. So neurological manifestations include decreased concentration, confusion, fatigue, stupor and coma. So cardiovascular, shortening of the QT interval, bradycardia, hypertension may be present. So how will you diagnose? So elevated serum calcium and intact parathyroid hormone are two-side parathyroid hormone levels without hypocalcemia establish the diagnosis of primary hyperparathyroidism. So in primary hyperparathyroidism, there may be elevated calcium levels and normal parathyroid hormone levels are two-side parathyroid hormone levels or increased parathyroid hormone levels can indicate the primary hyperparathyroidism. So parathyroid hormone assays use immunoradiometric or immunochemiluminescent techniques and can reliably distinguish the primary parathyroid hormone from other causes of hypercalcemia. So furthermore, they do not cross-react with the primary hyperparathyroidism. So urinary calcium levels need not be measured routinely. So except in patients who have not had previously documented normocalcemia or have a family history of hypercalcemia to rule out familial hyperparathyroidism. In familial hyperparathyroidism, 24-hour urinary calcium estimation is characteristically low. So routine urine calcium estimation is not indicated except if you suspect familial primary hyperparathyroidism. So biochemical features of primary hyperparathyroidism include serum test calcium increased except in normocalcemia or primary hyperparathyroidism. So intact parathyroid hormone so increased inappropriately or high in some conditions. So chloride level increased in high to normal levels. So phosphate decreased in decreased or low normal level. So chloride to phosphate ratio. This ratio will increase in primary hyperparathyroidism. So magnesium is unchanged. The uric acid level normal or increased. Alkaline phosphatase normal to increased. The acid-base status, mild hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis may be present in primary hyperparathyroidism. So these are all the features of primary hyperparathyroidism. Calcium is increased, or parathyroid hormone increased to or inappropriately high. So, chloride levels may be increased or somewhat higher side. Phosphate level decreased or low normal level may be present. So chloride phosphate ratio is increased. Magnesium may be unchanged. Uric acid normal. Alkaline phosphate may be normal. Acid-base status is mild hyperchloremic to metabolic acidosis. So calcium and creatinine clearance ratio is above greater than 0.02. So normal is whereas in case of familial hyperparathyroidism it is less than 0.01. So 125 dihydroxy vitamin D is normal. So vitamin D is normal to increase in urine test. So this is the this is the hand of the hyperparathyroidism picture showing multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 1 and primary hyperparathyroidism. The image shows superior acial bone resorption along the radial aspect of the middle pharynx. So the arrow indicates superior acial bone resorption. So this is the bone resorption. So this is the bone resorption. So you can see, so this is the resorbed bone. This is resorption of the bone. So that will look like a rugged jersey. So this is the jersey. Rugged jersey appearance is seen in vertebral column of hyperthyroid patient. System may be technetium 99 scan or system may be scan. So most widely used in accurate modality with sensitivity of greater than 80% of detection of parathyroid adenoma. So it has more than 80% sensitivity. Useful for parathyroid localization due to delayed washout of radionuclide from hypercellular parathyroid tissue compared to thyroid tissue. So it is very much useful for parathyroid localization. These are the pictures of system scan or technetium 99 subtraction scan. So this is showing thyroid gland. So after some time it may get washed out. So subtraction of a system AV to technetium leads to accurate view of parathyroid glands. Neck ultrasonography, high frequency ultrasound. So this has high sensitivity in experienced hands and the inexpensive, non-invasive procedure. So reproducible in the opening room. So helpful for the characterization and evaluation of the thyroid pathology, any thyroid pathology. So facilitating operative planning, and this is a common problem since concurrent thyroid pathology is present in up to 30% of patients with the primary hyperparathyroidism. So if there is any associated thyroid problem with the parathyroid gland, so neck ultrasonography will act as a screening procedure. So that will modify the situation. So it will depend on operator. Sensitivity is reduced in patient with the thyroid nodule. So sonographic characters of parathyroid adenomas include homogeneous hypoechogenicity and extrathyroidal feeding vessels and peripheral vascularity seen on color Doppler imaging. These are all the features on ultrasound. So we can localize the parathyroid gland. These are all the features like homogeneous opacity, hypoechogenic, and extrathyroidal feeding vessels and peripheral vascularity. So these are all the features to localize the parathyroid in ultrasound. So false negatives result from substernal or ectopic and undescended tumors. So differential diagnosis of primary hyperparathyroidism. These are all the main differential diagnoses. Primary hyperparathyroidism, there may be serum calcium is normal, high to normal, parathyroid may be high to normal, vitamin D levels normal, and serum phosphate level is low to normal. When there is a increase in parathyroid hormone levels, that will lead to the absorption of calcium or normalization of the low levels of calcium. So that will lead to normalization or high levels of calcium will be present. Parathyroid hormone will lead to excretion of phosphate through the kidney. So that will lead to low to normal level of phosphate. So in familial hyperparathyroidism, there may be calcium levels are normal to high, and parathyroid hormones are normal to mild to high. Vitamin D normal, and phosphate is normal to low. So this picture is almost similar to primary hyperparathyroidism. So vitamin D deficiency, serum calcium is low and are normal. So parathyroid hormone is high because of calcium is low. So that will lead to stimulation of parathyroid hormone release. That's why parathyroid hormone is a bit more higher side. So here vitamin D levels are low and phosphate is normal to low. So hypercalcemia of malignancy. So in hypercalcemia of malignancy, the calcium levels are high. When the calcium levels are high, the parathyroid hormone levels will decrease, and that's why here parathyroid hormone is low, and vitamin D is normal, and phosphate level is normal to low. So milk alkali syndrome. So calcium levels are high, parathyroid hormone levels are low, and vitamin D is normal. Serum phosphorus is normal. So these are all main differential diagnosis of hyperparathyroidism. So vitamin D deficiency, hypercalcemia malignancy, milk alkali syndrome, and familial hyperparathyroidism. These are all differential diagnoses for primary hyperparathyroidism. So this is the way of normal investigating procedure. When you see hypercalcemia, to measure parathyroid hormone. If the parathyroid hormone levels are elevated, so likely primary hyperparathyroidism, consider familial hyperparathyroidism. So measurement of urinary calcium. So measurement of urinary calcium. So if the urinary calcium is elevated, that means greater than 200 mg per dl. Primary hyperparathyroidism. Consider guidelines for surgery and refer for surgery or monitoring. If the urinary calcium levels are normal, that means 100 to 200 mg per dl. So parathyroid hormone versus the familial primary hyperparathyroidism or familial hyperparathyroidism may be considered. To rule out this one, so measure 25. Vitamin D levels we have to measure. So if the vitamin D levels are low, so primary hyperparathyroidism with vitamin D deficiency. To replete the vitamin D and reassess the urinary calcium excretion. So if the normal are high, so likely primary hyperparathyroidism. The urinary calcium level is low, so that is likely familial hyperparathyroidism. So in case vitamin D levels are normal, so even though you have to consider primary hyperparathyroidism or familial hyperparathyroidism, so most likely familial hyperparathyroidism. So familial screening or monitor. So we have to screen all the individuals in the family for symptoms and calcium levels or parathyroid hormone levels. So it will go most likely towards the familial hyperparathyroidism. So here in case of parathyroid hormone levels are mid to upper normal, so familial hyperparathyroidism versus primary hyperparathyroidism, the same investigation proforma is continued. So this is a bit confusion. So we have to look into carefully to measure urinary calcium excretion. So if it is normal, that means 100 to 150, 100 to 200 mg per dl. So you have to consider both familial and primary hyperparathyroidism. So measure vitamin D levels. So vitamin D levels, if the vitamin D levels are normal, so consider mainly familial hyperparathyroidism. So screen for all the family members. So if the vitamin D levels are low, so consider mainly primary hyperparathyroidism. So even though there is a chances of familial hyperparathyroidism, so mainly it will go towards the primary hyperparathyroidism. To rule out the familial, so you have to calculate the calcium excretion in urine. So if the parathyroid levels are low, so you evaluate for non-parathyroid immediate cause hypercalcemia. So if the parathyroid level is low, so you have to search for other cause of hypercalcemia. So indications for parathyroidectomy and role of medical management. Patients who have developed complications and have classic symptoms of primary hyperparathyroidism should undergo parathyroidectomy. So asymptomatic primary hyperparathyroidism has been subjected to medical management. So it is controversy. So medical options include anti-resorptive treatment such as bisphosphonates to prevent the hypercalcemia and bone resorption. So we have to use bisphosphonates, hormone replacement therapy, so selective receptor blocker. So by bisphosphonates and the hormone replacement therapy, reasonable options in patients with whom skeletal protection is needed. So more recently, calcium mimetic like sinacalcet, modifiers of the sensitivity of the calcium sensing receptors have been used in randomized multi-center control trials, have been shown to decrease both serum calcium and parathyroid levels in both symptomatic and asymptomatic. So primary, unfortunately, bone density failed to improve in medically treated patients. So this is the recent drug calcium mimetics like cinacalcet. So that will alter the sensitivity of the calcium synthesis receptors. So that will lead to normalization of serum calcium and parathyroid hormone levels. So bisphosphonates, hormone replacement therapy like selective estrogen receptor stimulants and uh, calcium mimetic agents. These are all medical therapies. The indications for parathyroid mean patients with asymptomatic primary hyperparathyroidism. So serum calcium levels greater than 1 mg per dl above the upper limits of normal. So GFR less than 6 ml per minute. Substantially decreased bone density at the lumbar spine, hip and distal radius. So decreased bone density, GFR less than 60 ml per ml. Serum calcium levels greater than 1 mg per dl. Age less than 50 years. Long-term medical surveillance not desired of or if possible. So these are all the indications for thyroidectomy in primary hyperparathyroidism, even though they are asymptomatic. So these are the guidelines for monitoring patients with asymptomatic primary hyperparathyroidism who do not undergo parathyroid surgery. So asymptomatic patients who are on medical management are under supervision. These are the guidelines for monitoring. So we have to monitor serum calcium. So we have to monitor skeletal changes by X-ray or some dual energy X-ray scanning. So renal, so serum calcium biannually. So according to recent guidelines, it has to check annually. So skeletal, so and previously it is annually, mainly forearm X-ray. Now the guidelines are changed to every 1 to 2 years. So we have to take 3 sites of X-rays. X-ray are high efficiency scans like dual energy X-ray, the spine of the spine, or so we have to take the spine or 3 sides. So if clinically significant, there may be height loss or back pain may be present. So renal, so we have to calculate EGFR annually, serum creatinine annually. So according to recent guidelines, EGFR annually, serum creatinine annually. So renal stone suspected, 24-hour biochemical stone profile, renal imaging by X-ray or ultrasound or CT. So these are so recent guidelines. So we have to check serum calcium annually and skeletal X-rays every 1 to 2 years. So EGFR annually and serum creatinine annually. If there is renal stone suspicious, so we have to go for renal imaging by X-ray, ultrasound, and CT. So this is how we have to monitor hyperparathyroidism patient. So thank you.